How's it going?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Look at you. You look great. Your haircut is nice, fresh
Oh,
red.
thank you. Thank you. Keeping it together. Are you on campus right now?
Yes, I am on campus. I
Yeah,
am
I
on
was
campus.
I was jogging this morning and went past. It looked so beautiful. I took a picture. The sun was coming up. Oh my God. It was so
I have a St. Charles view that I am in love with. Okay. Like, I know we have like a minute before the students come in, but literally the first classroom I was given, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is fine. But I have like 10 students that are supposed to be in person and it only allotted for 9. So I was like, so we need to kind of rearrange. And then they gave me this luxurious room. And I'm finding out from everyone that this is like the most wanted room in the building. And I'm like, I got it. So it's a lot of fun. I told everybody they, could stay home just so that I could be able to talk without the mask. But if I do have
Yeah.
students that come in person, I'll put my mask on.
Nice view. Yes, I'm admiring it. It looked so gorgeous this morning. The sun was coming up. And I was thinking about the panel this morning, just like, oh my God, it looks so beautiful. Like I feel the energy of Loyola, just like the sun is shining behind the building and I'm feeling it today.
Yes. Okay, let me see. All right, so great. I see I have students in. It's 9:30. I'm going to leave our other Zoom because I wanted to make sure nobody was in there
Okay.
and join this one. All right, I see we probably still have a few people that are coming in. And let me shoot a text to Fresh. And then I know Alicia is probably going to be a little bit late. She's actually only about 4 weeks out of her event, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, they're about 4 weeks out.
What's her event?
She does an edible evening with First
nice.
Line Schools. Yes. Have you been?
No.
No? Have you been to Love in the Garden at City Park?
Oh, no, but I know it. Yes. Okay.
You got to get to a garden party, Rebecca. The garden parties under the stars are amazing. And this is one of my favorites. An edible evening is one of my absolute favorites. Oh, she said, Fresh Jonathan. Let me text Jonathan. Fresh is looking for the link. Let me just make sure she has the right one. And then we'll jump in.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. To where? Okay. All right, so I think Fresh should be joining us any moment. I've got, looks like everybody is here today. Hello, class. Welcome to strategy session number 5. This is our first webinar series. I'm so excited for the ladies, and I still call them event producers that are joining, even though the titles don't say event producers. Rebecca Sell is already with us. Rebecca Sell is the marketing director, as you all know, of French Quarter Festival. And then we have Fresh Johnson will be joining us shortly. She is the Chief Amazement Officer at LRJ Events. And then we have Alicia Johnson, who is with First Line Schools and did a lot of the planning for an edible evening. She is the Director of Development for First Line Schools. So I think one of the most important things I want to start off saying is just because event production is not in your title does not mean that your company will not have you involved in some form of event planning. right? All right. So each panel discussion is going to feature 3 to 4 industry professionals, each from a different segment. Rebecca is coming from French Quarter Festivals, which is nonprofit. First Line is a charter school, their event, it's nonprofit. And then Fresh Johnson is coming from the perspective of actually having clients that want the big, the dramatic, the over the top. Not that money isn't an option, but that it isn't always. It's kind of like they're looking for the excitement. So let me share my screen because I do have, okay. Oh, all right. So Rebecca, let's go ahead and jump in. Hold on one second, actually.
Okay.
Give me one moment. Fresh is trying to make her way in, but I think that this is great because French Quarter Festivals is one of the biggest. And I think that some of these general questions I'm interested to know them as well, right? And I know you got a chance to look over some of the questions. A number of them have to do with budgeting, right?
Sure.
Because I showed the class one of my function sheets, specifically a budget, and kind of went through line item by line item. But we're also learning that function sheets are so much more than just budgets, and that still comes secondary to the first questions, right? And the first thing is, what is the purpose of the event and how do you visualize it? So
Exactly.
French Quarter Fest is an old festival, but I want you to talk to us about that because you all completely tried to change it up last year to adapt to COVID.
Exactly.
Right? So talk to us a little bit about the purpose of the event and how it had to shift because of COVID and what that planning looks like.
And I'll start with the purpose because can everyone, you can hear me okay?
There's Fresh. Hey, Fresh.
Good morning, Fresh.
Officer. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, we are a nonprofit organization. So we were founded in 1984 because that year the World's Fair came to New Orleans and the city had implemented a lot of improvements downtown. Basically, they tore up the streets and it really hurt the local economy. So our event was created by Mayor Morial as a way to bring people downtown to spend money and reward those businesses that had been so patient for so long. It was supposed to be a one-off, but it was very successful for the local business community and it continued. So now we are in our 39th year with that same mission. You know, we're a music festival and it's a huge party, but our mission is to drive economic activity for the city of New Orleans and to showcase Louisiana talent. So that is our purpose. And that is our mission statement is in front of us in all of our staff meetings in our conference room. That drives all of our decision making. Is this aligned to our mission? And then all of our decisions are based on that. And the budget is then after we have our strategic planning meetings and everything's on the whiteboard, these are our dreams. Then we look at the budget. And then the budget then doesn't help. The budget does determine what is actually possible. And that sheet is then what helps us create the actual plan of what's going to be implemented. So it starts with our mission and vision. The budget hones it, and then we create our strategic plan based upon the reality of the budget.
Yes. Thank you. So Fresh Johnson is with us. Fresh Johnson is the Chief Amazement Officer, like I've said, for LRJ Events. Fresh, as you saw, this is about a conversation pulling from different industries. And so what I really love that you're going to bring to this conversation is one, what your mission and your purpose is as a wedding planner, but also because you work with a number of festivals. I think you're doing some design for Lark in the Park. You did design for Fried Chicken Festival. And so what it can look like sometimes being a part of one of those components, but also what it looks like being a wedding planner, which I've never planned a wedding. I don't want to touch it, but Fresh is the person. So Fresh, start by telling us a little bit about how you apply your purpose. What is your purpose for when you're working with a bride specifically, speaking from a wedding perspective?
So my purpose is to make sure that she's stress-free through the planning process, but also at the end of the night that they walk away not feeling like they missed the party and wasted money, which is probably the most common feeling that a lot of couples have after their weddings. So I think my goal is to, make it smooth, get them to the altar, and then make sure that they feel good when they leave. Because when you talk to brides and grooms, they are a lot of times at the end of the wedding, they're like, dang, that's it. I paid $50,000, $60,000 for that. So as a planner, to hear that, you kind of feel like you failed. So I'm just there to make it right.
I love it. That's very good point. Very good point. And so that kind of brings us to this other question, which is how much can you spend and how does that change? I mean, Rebecca, things when they changed up and you had to re-strategize and how is this going to look and who are we hiring as videographers? We've never had to have videographers for French Quarter Fest, and the same thing, Fresh. I'm sure everybody doesn't come to you with a $50,000 or $60,000 budget. So Rebecca, let me start with you just talking a little bit about how you decide each year for French Quarter Fest how much you can spend.
Okay, well, a lot of that, and I should say, this year is a wild card. So let's just pretend like in a normal year, if we had actually had a festival, if we had had our festival last year, the success of that event would have shaped our 2021 budget. So we would know, great, we hit all of we set our revenue goals and our sponsorship goals. We're a free festival. We make our money on our beverage and merchandise sales and our sponsorships. So every year we set the goal. And if we meet that goal, that means that the following year, a lot more of those dreams are going to be able to come true. We'll have the money for the budget. Mm-hmm. So it all depends on the success of the year before and our sponsorships of the current year, which the success of the year before makes it a lot easier to sell sponsorships the following year. So we're always, my job, I'm the marketing director for the festival, but I also work with all of our corporate sponsors, and there are several dozen, because each one of them, of course, they're philanthropic, but they have business goals. They invest in our festival because they have business goals, and their goals are often marketing driven. So I work with every individual sponsor to make sure that their marketing, all of the marketing deliverables are happening and that they are achieving an ROI so they return. So my role, even though I'm out there spending the money. I'm the marketing director. I'm out there, I'm buying ads, I'm spending the money, but I'm also supporting our development team because my success is their success. Mm-hmm. We're all working together. So that success drives the budget and helps us determine how much we have to spend. Now, this year, of course, our budget is decimated. So, things like the video in a normal year, I would say, let's bring in a videographer. The sponsor would love this. Let's do a customized video. Let's produce a documentary. This year it's going to be more like, I'll take my phone. I've got my phone. So, we're a small nonprofit and we have to adapt.
So really quickly, before we jump to you, Fresh, and how much you can spend, Rebecca, I want you to put something in perspective for the students. If we're looking at a pie, right? And we're saying that the revenue from French Quarter Festival comes from merchandise, it comes from beverages, and it comes from sponsors. Yes, there are other things, but those are the dominant ones, right? What percentage would you apply to that? What percentage would you apply to the revenue you get from sponsors, merch, bev?
So let's look at then 50% sponsors, 40% bev, 10% merchandise.
That's what I wanted to hear you say. I mean, not hear you, but like
Yeah.
people think, oh, if I have this merch, it's gonna make all this money. Merch is it's not a big avenue of income. So Fresh, let me jump over to you. Talk to me a little bit about how you get to decide how much you can spend. Wait, you on mute, you on mute.
The burden that I do not have to carry is that of it being my event. So like when I think about the things Rebecca just talked about, like, oh my God, I would go crazy because that's way harder. Whereas in my situation, these people come to me and it's their money. So I get to spend other people's money and I tell them nice stuff costs money. So if you want this, it's gonna cost this. If you can't afford this, then let's look at other ways to kind of to build it out. I tell them certain things that we cannot budge on. Like if you don't have a good photographer and videographer for your wedding, it didn't happen. That's your money going right there. It's wasted. So there's some things that we can absolutely cannot budge on, and then there's other things we can kind of work our way through. So over the years, I've kind of built the brand in a way that if you only could spend $20,000, I may not be the planner for you because a lot of your budget going to pay me. But also I don't count people out that have smaller budgets. I say, okay, let's do this. You know how much the planner is going to cost. You know how much photo and video is going to cost. Those are things that will not move. Let's go worst case scenario as we build the budget, and then we prioritize from there and kind of scale down. So when you see how much what you want costs, we can automatically, okay, well, maybe that's not as important. Maybe I don't need somebody hanging from the roof of the chapel singing to me while I walk down the aisle, So it really just depends. And I always ask clients, how do you want to feel when this wedding is over? Will you be mad at yourself for spending this money when this wedding is over? What are y'all going to? Are y'all going to a home with a roof when y'all leave this wedding? You don't want to dig yourself in a hole. So how you want to feel after it's over, that is probably the best starting point when we having conversations about the budget.
I love it. So let me go in, because you all already got my general question number one with those answers. So talk to us about some of the function sheets that you used and how often you reference them or change them. And Fresh, I'm gonna just start right back with you on your reference sheets, on your function sheets.
So function sheets for me, can you define what?
Yeah, so your function sheet would be your budget. It would be your team and their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
It would be the things that you use to, those documents.
Yes. So I am the crazy lady with all of the sheets when it comes down to just the organization. So I actually have a platform that I use called Our Planner, and it's kind of like it's a cloud-based system where we can go where all these things live at and where they're able to see what I'm working on in real time. So that's where the budget lives. The timeline that I start to build out, probably when we get timestamps in place, like what time this is starting, what time this is starting, I begin building out a timeline. So that's something I refer to all the time. It's the Bible. So like when we're on site at a wedding and a vendor come ask me a question that's on my sheet, I'm like, you didn't read the sheet. So that's I'm trying to think what else I use. A lot of, okay, so every element of it has its own document. So like any with decor stuff or actual physical items that have to be delivered, there's a sheet that we build out that has this table has A, B, C, and D. This table has A, B, C, and D. Whereas you have other people that may not have a tangible thing that they're bringing, but it may be a service. Then we have another sheet for them. Harpist, you go here, and pianist, you go here. So it looks a lot different from a function sheet, a set of function sheets that I may use for a wedding versus something corporate. But those are like my go-tos. Run a show / timeline. Run a show for corporate, timeline for wedding, and also a budget because a budget.
Because of budget, yes.
Because of budget.
Okay, let me take a moment just to welcome Alicia Johnson. Like I said, Alicia is the Director of Development for First Line Schools, and her event is an edible evening. So Alicia, I'm gonna hold on you for just a moment. Rebecca, I'm gonna let you speak to your function sheets, and then Alicia, I'm gonna come back to you and let you kind of elaborate on a few things. Okay? Sure. Rebecca, talk to us about the French Quarter Fest function sheets.
Y'all, we're pretty analog. So we, pre-COVID, a lot of Excel and Word. But like Fresh, our budget was an Excel doc. And that was something, a shared doc that we were always dipping into. Our production schedule was also done in Excel because, well, first of all, the music schedule, because we have 250 acts and there are 23 stages. So you can imagine the time slots, and all of those musicians are changed. We book it, and then every single day it changes. So we're always in there trying, and I'm trying to keep up and make sure that those updates make it to the website and to our app. So it's for us, it's been a bit clunky. My run of show for media, I have a separate run of show from the festival production schedule. So my run of show alone is about 10 pages, just because I might issue 300 media credentials. Well, you know, Heather, you've come with your team before, and sometimes it's just maybe a photographer coming, but sometimes it's the BBC and they're bringing flying an entire crew in, and they're going to do a 10-minute segment. That production schedule alone can be 5 pages. So I have my production schedule, and then we have our overall festival production schedule, which can be like a book. And we literally map out almost minute by minute, not only what needs to be happening at that time, but who's on point and who to contact. I was talking to another student yesterday, and she was asking me a lot of questions about production. And I said, I'm not a production expert. I'm a marketing expert. But as a director, I have the resources. I know the experts. So in my production schedule, they may be building out a stage and there's an electrical issue. I don't know how to fix that. But I've got on my function sheet who to call, and I've got their cell phone number, and I probably know exactly where they're located because they're on radio as well. So I walk around. It's nerdy, but I have my clipboard, and I print out all of my documents, because sometimes we can't get Wi-Fi out there. And I have pieces of paper, and it is like a novel on that clipboard, and it's all of the information that I need, and even the budget, because when festival is happening, sometimes we're tempted. There are crises, and sometimes in the heat of the moment, it's just like, we just need to fix this, and we always have to look at that budget to make sure that we're not about to make a decision that's going to make it worse. So very analog, just because I'm out there in the field and often don't have internet, but very organized chaos.
Yes, yes. I actually love that you mentioned that it was 2 things, that it's still clunky, and that's after 39 years, because there is just so much to juggle, and every year is still different vendors, different musicians. Some are the same, but some things change. And so you just get as much of a system as you can, templated as possible.
Yes.
And also you mentioned how important it is to bring in the experts. So we'll possibly discuss that a little bit later, but that's something that we talked about in class as well. So Alicia Johnson, welcome to the webinar, My Favorite Garden Party Under the Stars. Tell us, what I really started with Fresh and Rebecca was just talking a little bit about the purpose of your event and how you get to decide how much you're going to spend.
Oh, wow. The purpose of our event, I keep it simple. Like, we have 4 gardens, 4 school gardens, 2 teaching kitchens. We have a mini farm at one of our schools. And I want to make sure that our students who are New Orleans kids, public schools, 99% children of color, 88% Black, 10% Latino, are getting the education that they deserve, that we are underfunded to provide. And so when we start out with this grand idea of like making sure that our donors come to the garden feeling connected to our programming and understanding what our children are doing in the garden, like growing their own food, cooking, learning to cook it in the kitchen in healthy ways, interfacing with the worms and showing gratitude to the bees and all the things. We have to balance that with all of the great ideas that come to us from our volunteers, from our program staff, and so I guess I always wind up being the one that's like, no, we can't do that. Maybe we can do that. Like I always have that budget in mind because I know what it takes to provide this programming that no other public school system is offering right now. and it has to be like our party has to be in line with the environmental stewardship that we teach our children. It has to be in line with a very natural aesthetic. And so yeah, there are a lot of things that we have, you know, included because it brings money in at the end of the day for our programming, but we never want to forget that we are raising money for thousands of children to have an experience that I never had as a public school student in New Orleans. And it's changing the way they think about food, they think about community, they think about culture. It's changing their expectation as they're becoming adults of what their children will be entitled to or deserve, you know, when they come to school. And it's helping to change the way children and families are eating and living. So that's the basic purpose of Edible Evening, which is that party under the stars in one of our school gardens. And I can go into more details. As an overview.
I'm sure we'll get back to some other things too, but yes, but thank you for that basis. As you were talking, Alicia, one of the things that I was thinking about, of course, knowing and working with an Edible Evening so closely is that a lot of things are in-kind donations, you know, whether that's the wine, whether that's what's going into the art auction. And then also, like you said, because you work and you deal so much with getting those sponsorships in, you are that much more careful about putting the money outside of what is going to the program. So one of the things I want to talk about is the best way to shop around for vendors. And one of the questions that the students asked were, is it better to stay within your network or always to try to make new connections? I'm going to bring this one first. I'm going to actually leave it with you, Alicia, and just talk a little bit about those vendors, because what I'm thinking of specifically to give to the students is, when you're looking for vendors and you're looking for restaurants, you're looking for those restaurants to donate a certain number of servings, right? You're looking for the winery to donate a certain number of bottles. So talk about what that looks like, because those are still your vendors, whether they are doing it in kind or whether you would have to pay them out of pocket. But in kind, of course, assists your purpose and your ultimate goals. So.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question a little bit, and just again with an awareness of how the party started and who our vendors were in the beginning, because this party is about 11 years old now. It started as an uptown group who wanted to support Edible Schoolyard, and they were inviting their friends, and we were using vendors and restaurants that they were familiar with. And the party continued to grow, but mainly continued to stay within a certain group of people, you know, very generous, philanthropic people. And so as we are in our 11th year and we're looking at, and we are literally pivoting that garden party to Edible Evening at home, where people will be able to have a gardening and restaurant experience in the comfort of their own home. We have been thinking a good bit about how do we make this more equitable. Like you mentioned, when we would go to the big restaurants, you know, the really established restaurants who could provide 400 to 500 servings for free for us. And that meant that excluded a lot of our more community-based organizations. And so over the years, we have been more intentional about maintaining relationships with those vendors, and also trying to balance it with establishing new relationships, supporting smaller emerging businesses, supporting our Black-owned restaurants, and just diversifying more, you know. And so, yeah, it definitely is a balance that we continue to strike. And we literally this year, because we had to cut back the event, we decided this year that we would have Edible Evening also give back to the restaurants, because they've been giving us for free for 10 years. Giving back to the restaurant community, it limited how much of our funds we could actually give back to the restaurants and still support our program. That cut our number in half. And so we had to decide, like, do we go with our faithful, tried and true long-term restaurants, and exclude any new potential vendors who we might not have been able to work with in the past, or do we figure out a rubric? And so we created a rubric this year that included individuals who have given to us over the years, but also included whether or not they are Black owned or native to New Orleans, included whether they've ever come to our school gardens and came to our teaching kitchens, included how many years they've been supporting our organization. So, trying to like diversify how we decide who to include, because we can't include everybody. And we do want to respect and appreciate the vendors we worked with in the past.
Thank you. Yes, it was such good information. I'm going to move right over to you, Fresh. I know that you work with a number of different vendors, right? Consistently, your people that are your go-to. So for you, what would you say is the best way to shop around for vendors? Do you stay within your network, or are you always trying to make new connections, or just search out, oh, I think I might want to use them next time?
Well, I always love working with new people. I definitely have my go-tos, but budget pending. I kind of go to vendors who I know are in certain price points. Um, and in the quest to working with new people, I have a rule: if you don't answer my emails, you don't get my business. Because a lot of times we have people that do great work, probably would knock it out of the park, but I don't have capacity to chase to give business to whatever. So that is why I have my tried and true people that I know I could go to this person, I'm gonna hear back just acknowledging that they received my email, and then maybe in 48 hours I'm gonna have a quote. People that make my job easier as a planner, it's probably the biggest sell, but also people that I know that are going to take care of my clients and deliver.
Thank you. Yes, Rebecca, finish it off with your vendors. This is 39 years
Sure.
old. How do you decide to stick with the same vendors or find new and make new connections?
Well, first off, everything Fresh said.
Everything.
We're so busy. And after 39 years, our network is tight. Like, we work with good people. At first, our priority is only New Orleans. So that's what drives our decision. Are they, similar to what Alicia said, are they from New Orleans? Are there demographics that we want to serve? How does this support our mission? And we have over 39 years cultivated a network, and we know, they're going to respond to the email, they're going to deliver. So most of the time we work with the same vendors over and over, and that goes from people who are providing services to us and our food vendors. We have about 70 food booths out there. And if you demonstrate that you're going to deliver, you're going to be invited to return year after year. So it's very rare when slots open up. We've got a long waiting list. We let new food vendors in, but we're not just going to kick somebody out. Once you're in the family and you've proven yourself, you're in the family. There have been a few times when there have been some fallouts in the family, and we have then interviewed new vendors, and sometimes it is a success, and then sometimes it's not. There have been times when we've, after a year of working with a new vendor, said, you know what, this isn't going to work, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back and mend some fences, because sometimes new people come in, and with an event our size, they're not really thinking ahead. They're just like, I want to be part of that. But once they get in and it's so massive, they're just not prepared. And so that's where our trusted vendors, they've been with us, they get it, they know. So we're pretty tight.
Yeah. I feel like there's really there's two more I'm going to pull from the general questions, and then I'm going to try and go and catch some of the ones that they had directly for each of you. And I know that this can get long, so let's try to still keep this question short, but I think it's important that we all speak to it. Have there been moments when you realized that something went really wrong with the budget or logistics of an event, and how did you correct it? And I'm going to start with Alicia. You're on mute, Alicia. Make sure you're on mute before you start.
I may need to, I might need to.
Think for a moment?
Yeah, think for a moment.
Okay, no problem, no problem. I'm popping it back over to Rebecca.
Okay.
Every year something happens, because we're dealing with thousands of details, and sometimes there are unanticipated costs. Sometimes there are crises where it's like, whoa, I didn't, after I've been with the organization 8 years, I'm like, I've seen it all. And then I'm like, didn't see that coming. So, there have been times, there have been $50,000 mistakes, and it hurts, but you have to move forward. And I think the first thing is to just admit it. I will let y'all know I've never made the $50,000 mistake. Some people on my team have.
I'm just saying.
And you got to own it. Like it's okay. We all make mistakes. So first own it and make everyone aware, okay, there's a problem, because that gives us a chance to possibly fix it. You're not going to hide it. Eventually it's going to come out. So if you know that there's been a mistake, or you see that there's something that's unanticipated, own it, fix it, elevate it, and then pull in the experts, because it's still going to hurt. A $50,000 mistake is going to hurt, but no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and there are ways to make it less painful. But often that individual alone is not going to have the solution. If they made the mistake, they're probably not going to be able to fix it on their own. They need the support of the team, and they probably need the support of an expert to come in. And we also on our board have a task force. So when things like that happen, we engage the task force, and they help us work through the problem solving process as well.
Thank you. Yes. Fresh.
So in the same breath that I say everything is fixable, that's what I tell my team when we go in. It's the same breath that I say, but nothing better not happen, because you got one shot to pull off, right? I have literally ran from one side of Studio B to the other with the broom for them to jump while the preacher was getting ready to say, jump the broom. I have dug in trash cans on Decatur Street looking for escort cards. I have dug in a trash can looking for a cake topper that one of the caterers threw away. Like, whatever it takes, it has to be done, because you have one chance. And I'm not gonna not do something because I think, oh, I'm the one in charge, I'm the lead. Like, I don't play like that with my team. Like, if I gotta get a trash can, and y'all, I got a lot of trash cans in wedding planning, I gotta get in the trash can, And in regards to a budget mistake, there have been times
Fresh, we having some difficulty with your connection. You froze. All right, I'm gonna let Fresh, there she is. She's back to life. So go ahead, Fresh.
I have, I think I was talking about the mistakes. Oh, my internet connection is unstable. Come on, guys, don't do this. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I often would just take that L. Thank the Lord, it has not been a $50,000 L, but for me, I may have a client that does a makeup trial with somebody, and I may drop the ball, and they want to book this person, and I may drop the ball on that contract book, and then that person books someone else, and then it's like, oh, I paid money for this trial, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll pay your next trial with somebody else. So it's little stuff like that, but I have no problems taking an L if I have to. Like Rebecca said, one of the steps is admitting. If I could say, you know what, I dropped the ball on keeping that conversation going to get your contract, so I'll handle that. Like, we threw away there was something framed. Honestly, it looked like the picture that just came with the frame to me. But apparently this lady paid a lot of money for somebody to draw a picture of the hotel we were at, and it got thrown away, and somebody on my team threw it away, and he didn't admit it, which is probably why I still got a little chip on my shoulder with him to this day. But I had to pay that money because I knew it was somebody on my staff that did. So, like I said, everything's fixable, even if it costs us, but nothing better not happen.
Thank you, Fresh. Okay, Alicia, did you think of something that you want to give an example of?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I honestly, like, I think a balance of what both Rebecca and Fresh said, we've had some mistakes, but I also feel like because we are going back to our documents so often, going back to, we meet so regularly, we are able to like course correct, before there's any major expense, because again, like we have a much smaller budget compared to probably both of you, or all of you. And like every misstep we make, I see it as like taking, food out of our kids' mouths, so like literally, because they're in garden and culinary, programming. And so I really probably over and micromanage a lot more than I want to. But I think because we're checking in so frequently, we're able to catch some things. So one of the reasons I was even late to this call is that we were trying to address a vendor situation where we invested some money in social media management, and we didn't get what we, were promised. And, we're within a week and a half of closing, our restaurant package sales and just trying to figure out what to do. And so, yeah, it was a matter of, having to make a hard decision of, as a team, what we would do. But again, it was a matter of, like someone said, like if that one person who's responsible for it has made the mistake on our team, or the vendors made the mistake, like it's usually not going to be something that they can solve. And so we do need a bigger brain, and so that was the conversation we were having. The other thing that struck me is that, our event, kind of, it got big, a lot bigger than we had intended. I mean, this event started with 200 people, 10 years ago. And, by 2019, we had 1,000 people coming to a school garden, and so as all of the vendors, restaurants, why did we not think that somebody was going to have an allergic reaction? Somebody was not going to know that there was, peanuts in the dish. And sure enough, it was like one of a very prominent person in our community who had an allergic reaction. And so, we were scrambling for the EpiPen. We weren't sure what to do. So needless to say, that following year, we came to, we had a meeting and acknowledged that this is a 1,000 person event. I think in our mind, we're like, well, it's 999. Oh, it's 900 people. No, it's 1,000 people. And at 1,000, you are required to have an EMT on site. That means you have to put that in your budget, and so, yeah, like for me, like pinching pennies, like I don't want to buy an extra tent. I don't want to have an EMS on our side if we don't need to. But I think some of it too is just acknowledging that we can't run big events like, a house party. Like we have to admit when we have outgrown our former practices and what we need to do to step up. And so that was a learning in helping us look at what we need to put in our budget.
So good. That was great. Thank you, Alicia. All right, so I'm going to jump into some of these individual questions. We have 19 minutes left. Fresh, how did you begin to cultivate relationships when you were just starting out as an event planner? And let the students know how long you've been planning events.
Ooh, Lord, let me tell my age right quick. I've been doing this 14 years. 2017 made 10 years. Carry that one. 14 years. So yeah. Oh, okay. So how did I cultivate relationships first started? Okay, so I'm gonna be very honest with y'all. I didn't know Black planners were not a thing when I started, or at least I didn't know them. Nobody baked me a cake and said, welcome to the industry. Nobody was necessarily excited about working with me. And I'm like, I'm young. I have to watch my mouth. I curse a lot. I'm like, I'm freaking amazing. Like, what's up, y'all? What's popping? And it just wasn't this welcome that I expected. So I had to go to different vendors and ask to borrow stuff. And I was willing to pay, but get it at a discounted rate to borrow stuff to do these style shoots. And I would get, my homegirl would come all the way from Houston because she thought I was dope. She came from Houston and she would take pictures of my stuff. And that was how I built my portfolio. And so from there, people started seeing like, oh, she does know what she's doing, and I started to get in with different vendors. And now, like, if I want to do a style shoot tomorrow, I could call anybody and they're going to come and they're like, no, you don't have to pay nothing. And it's done. Right. But it took me a very long time to get to that point. So in the industry, that was not a lot of planners. Like there is a planner for every person in New Orleans right now. That wasn't always the case. So it was just a much smaller pool of people to deal with. But it's almost like I had to show them first. And then it was like, all right, cool, you can come in. So I don't act like that with new people now. I'm like, what do you need? What do you want to do? What's your vision? How can I help? Because I know what it felt like coming into a space, a party that wasn't really, nobody was like, hey.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. All right, and I think also just to kind of piggyback on that class, one of the things that I've said is the importance of really creating those connections and continuing to strengthen those relationships. And when you've worked with a vendor and that vendor has, helped you out, right, and gone above and beyond what they needed to do for you, make sure that you are thanking them, that you are showing your appreciation so that they look forward to working with you as much as you look forward to working with them again. All right, the next question is going to be for Alicia. I thought this was perfect because I was like, oh yeah, this is only one person asked, but how many times have we had this with an edible evening? What is the protocol if the weather does not permit that day? Do you have a backup indoor event or indoor space venue? Of course.
Yes, absolutely. Our event is an outdoor event. It's best self when it's 100% outside in our gardens, checking on our chickens and our goats and, and walking around our plants. But probably I'd say 80, maybe 70% of the time, the weather has either torrentially rained like a couple hours before the event or is scheduled to rain during our event. And so we went from having only one plan to having a rain plan, just a regular rain plan and a sun plan. Now we actually have 3 plans. It's the sun plan, a partial sun plan, and a torrential rain plan. If it's partially sunny, but some rain here and there, we have a number of tents that we can put out, and we'll have certain, definitely, restaurants that are cooking over flames. We'll make sure that they're outside under a tent, and then put most of our restaurants inside. And then again, we also moved our event from one of our smaller school gardens to a larger garden with a larger footprint, a school footprint that we're able to host in the gym, in the cafeteria, in the hallway, in the atrium, into the library. And so, yeah, ideally it's outside, but we have figured out how to do an amazing event inside, 100% inside.
Oh, it's always lovely no matter what. It really is. Okay, Rebecca. I love this question because, as you know, I love planning out the design. Fresh Nose Too with Fried Chicken Fest. I love this is how it looks. So when planning out the French Quarter Festival, how do you know where to place the stages for the musicians and where to place the food stands and trash cans, etc.? Is there a strategy behind the placement at the French Quarter Fest?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, we work on French Quarter Fest for 9 months. And even last week, I was in a 3-hour meeting looking at 23 pages of maps. Everything is strategically planned down to the garbage, every garbage can. Nothing is random. So the stages are placed. First off, we have to think about traffic flow, ingress and egress. We want to make sure that there's a flow. We have sometimes in 2019, 800,000 attendees. So we want to make sure people are comfortable and it's safe. And think about sound bleed, because I'm telling you, even down to every speaker on every stage is planned out. We need to make sure that our trash cans are in very specific locations to cut down on our waste management costs. And our food vendors as well. We want to make sure that everything works together. We want the food vendors to have success. We want to place them close to our large music stages, but we also have to think about safety and where can they get electricity? Where can we make sure people are cooking, sometimes with an open flame, that there are no trees around. So there are millions of details, and nothing there is random. Every sign that you see, every portalette, every garbage can has been talked about and examined and tweaked. And one of the coolest parts of my job is on Saturday, I go up in a helicopter, and I usually take media and they're reporting, but I'm also with a photographer taking operational photos. And then we pull those up every year, and then we look at it from above. Okay, this was our plan, but what was really happening on the ground? That's the level of detail that we work with. So nothing there is random. Everything is planned out, and it's planned out for months and months and months and documented.
And years, because you're also
And-
still working from,
Exactly. Some
what
things
you've
were
seen
like,
over the years.
that worked. Sometimes it's like, okay, that works. We're going to keep doing that.
Mhm.
But again, the plan is always fluid because maybe it worked for 10 years and now it no longer works. Or maybe a new sponsor has come in and said, we want to do something different. So we always have to adapt.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. So Fresh, coming back to you, I think you mentioned this, but I like the last part of this question. So when approaching a wedding, what are key budget factors? You mentioned your videography, photography, 100%, that you consider as a foundation. If a budget doesn't allow you to do everything that a client dreams of, how do you explain to the client where they understand why they want it, but it's not in your budget?
If you don't have the money for it, it's just not gonna happen. Like, I'm not paying for it. This is not my wedding. I am so clear with money conversations with clients. You can't pay my vendors later. You know, not all vendors offer discounts. I don't haggle my vendors. We have to be very honest about what we have in front of us and how you want to divvy this out. So I have instances where clients will be like, nobody likes to wait until the last minute, right? I like to get stuff, as much stuff solidified, or at least know what the numbers are for stuff in advance, so they know that they can pay, they know what has to come out. But in the same breath of that mindset, the money has to be there. Like, we're not planning to use money that y'all do not have. If we agree on a budget, this is the max that you want to spend, then that's what I'm working with. I don't want to work around funds that you don't have, because then I'm wasting my vendors' time. And these are people that I have to keep good relationships with my vendors, because when y'all go right off in the sunset to your honeymoon, these are the people that I have to go back to time and time again. So I just like to be very clear. Like, if it's not there, we're not planning for it. We are trying to be as realistic as possible. I can't get clients to give me, a quote on a goat if we're not getting a goat, if we're not getting a goat. And I don't know why I said goat, but yeah, just that, whatever that thing is.
Let me stay with you for a minute, because I remember us having a conversation at Nicole's house, and you mentioned I have fired a bride before. Like, I haven't been fired, but I fired someone before. So I want you to explain that a little bit, because one of these questions, which I found to be an interesting question, but I was like, maybe that will speak to Fresh. How much of your vision are you willing to sacrifice for your client's vision?
None now. I don't have to. I don't, and that's being honest. And I don't know if that's on the I do a different vetting process now. Like, I've had some very traumatic experiences with brides. I hate getting into situations where I get into bed with somebody that I can't get out of with until their wedding is over, and it's stressful and I'm not happy, and it doesn't look like my work. Like, there's a handful of weddings that will never see the light of day on my social media or on my website, because I sacrifice my vision, or I sacrifice what I know I can do or what my works look like for that. And I'm not claiming it, And so now I'm in a space where I don't take those kind of jobs anymore. And I will definitely help you find somebody, find your next planner, or somebody, that can work with you better. But like, now it's all about, this is what my work looks like. This is the quality of my work. And this what we rolling with. We're not using fake flowers. It's not happening. Little stuff like that. Like, I have my hard nose, and we just roll with it.
I love it. All right. So let me come back to Alicia. Alicia, and some of these are really easy questions to me from you, but like, when it comes to setting a budget for food, drink vendors, how do you make sure that there is enough of everything for the amount of people attending? But I think you can speak to the fact that, when we started off with 200 people, we needed X amount of servings from X amount of restaurants. But as we continue to grow, that changed. And how did you all adapt throughout the years?
Yeah. Well, we're really fortunate to have a restaurant chair who was a former chef educator of our students, and so she's really bought into our vision. She's really bought into our mission. She loves our kids. She knows our kids. She knows our school leaders, and so she has really strong relationships with a lot of the local vendors, particularly restaurants who we're working with. And she's been able to figure out over the years which ones can adapt. Another question that was asked earlier, or somewhere, oh no, another question in this section was about what if a vendor runs out of food? And Katie has been the one to help figure out whether or not it's a matter of something that we did on our end, or whether it was lack of preparation by that vendor in order to determine whether they would get invited again, or whether it's something that we need to do. And one year it was our fault. We hadn't communicated to our volunteers that you don't eat before 8 p.m. So our volunteers, they gone through and eat the food. But we learned from that very quickly. And now we feed them pizza at the beginning and say, you don't get to eat till after 8 o'clock, but and so that was that situation. But for the most part, if we figured it out so tightly now, because that was in the early days, that we know about how many people are coming, about what time, the patron party starts at 6, the regular party starts at 7. We have an idea of the flow and how long food should be lasting. And similarly with our beer garden, we included a beer garden a few years ago. And so, just watching those numbers and coming back at the end of the year, at the end of the event, and doing a debrief and figuring out, what pivots we need to make for the next year helps us to pretty consistently provide a good party.
I love it. Y'all, I'm amazed that I feel like we've pretty much kind of touched on everything from every one of these questions. The only two that we didn't really, because Rebecca, you said that you all really start budgeting like 9 months in advance, like 100%, right? And you mentioned that the vendors are like family. So I will present this question. How often do vendors fall through, Rebecca, for French Quarter Fest?
For our tried and true, rarely, because we're so tight and they have proven themselves and we know that they're going to deliver.
Exactly.
There have been times when we've experimented and we've been disappointed. And it doesn't happen often, because typically we're very conservative and we're very selective about who's in our family. And once they're in there proving themselves, they have to do something really bad for us to try someone new. But we have been disappointed before. And it's been very stressful, because if somebody doesn't deliver, the whole plan it affects, everything affects everything. And if one vendor doesn't deliver, it's going to have a ripple effect, and we're all going to be dealing with it, and we're all going to be talking about it 2 years later.
100%. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then I just want to touch on something about each of you all's events, and then we'll close it up. And I'll, if you all have anything else you want to share, of course, you feel free to. Are you all ever working on 2 events at one time? Everyone says yes.
Always.
Yes.
Always. If I'm not, then it's a problem.
Yeah. Yes. So let me say, I have to talk about the cocktail at an edible evening. Only because, Rebecca, as you know, when I was doing a lot in the NOLA and I would go to all these things, there were so many different events that would try to do this signature cocktail, and it would be awful. It was just not executed well. Every year, the edible evening cocktail is delicious, and it runs out. It runs out inevitably because everybody's trying to get as much of it as possible. It's like this fresh basil mint, something wonderful, right? So what I want to say about each of these panelists is that there are things that they haven't even touched on, that when I think about the events that they do, it's a part of my emotional connection to it. And so I mentioned to Alicia that I got my invitation for an edible evening this year, and looking at the invitation and just loving the artwork on it. Every year, the artwork is so beautiful that you just look forward to, like, what is this artwork gonna look like this year? That's a big piece, right? Fresh, I'll never try and design anything again in life. Like when I walked through Fried Chicken Fest and Fresh had designed these tents that I had like struggled to create and make them look nice, I was like, okay, I'm waiting till I get to use you. And I got to use Fresh at my most recent event that we talked about in class, the Flourish Award ceremony, and all the set designs were like She was what? Oh, easy peasy, easy peasy. And I'm just looking like, you gonna do this in 24 hours? It took me 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So knowing when to get your expert, right? So Edible Evening is using the right expert to make their cocktail. They don't have their volunteers making the cocktail so that nobody enjoys the cocktail and it's a waste of all the ingredients. Fresh is the expert. She's gonna make my life easier, or anyone that she brings her design to, she's gonna make it easier. And then Fresh Quarter Fest, so many of the students have not been. So I really hope that, I know. So I really hope that like when life really starts back up and we have beautiful weather again, that they really go out and experience it, because French Quarter Fest is hands down the best music festival. You have so many stages, you have so many bands that you are probably never gonna hear if you don't hear them and catch them at the French Quarter Fest stage, and they're bringing a quality sound. So you guys keep doing amazing things. Thank you so much for taking some time to help me teach the students and to allow me to learn from you all a little bit more as well. I do want to just leave the floor open a little bit if you have anything else that you all want to say, acknowledge, or mention to the students. Rebecca. Oh no, go ahead, Fresh, go.
I just want to encourage them to find what part of this industry they want and get really good at it. Other things will come. I didn't always work in festivals, in the festival world, from a design standpoint. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't always do corporate stuff, but I got really good at weddings, and people would come to my weddings and say, I work for such and such. We want to work with you. We want you to, when you get really good at something, it's just it only gets better, so don't overwhelm yourself trying to do every little thing. Just find something you really enjoy about events, get really good at it, and I promise you, it's going to take you everywhere.
Yep, I agree. Yep. Rebecca?
And I would just like to add to that, to bring passion, because it's hard work. It's not pretty. It's very glamorous, but the stakes are high and it's stressful, and you've got to have passion. And the payoffs are huge. I know Fresh and Alyssa know, at the event, when you see it's been executed well, there is no feeling like that. It's amazing, but you've got to have passion or you're going to burn out, because it's a lot of evenings and weekends, and often making choices in your life and prioritizing and making sure you've got to be a professional at all times in this industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alicia?
I'll say that I found my way to this work in fundraising, just traditional grant writing, and connecting to an organization that I really love and believe in, and wanted to help them raise as much money as they could. And it started off as grant writing and writing letters, and next thing I knew, we were planning events, and so yeah, there's so many connections, so many transferable skills. I think if you are a great writer, or if you aspire to be a great writer, that is definitely a place to focus your energy, because good writing can take you anywhere, and it's needed for every field of fundraising, and including event management. So definitely want to encourage all the writers who are interested in seeing how far their writing can take them, that there are lots of places. So definitely continue to hone that skill.
And if I could jump in, I'm a marketing director who began as a freelance reporter, and I was an English major. It was all about the writing, and it opened a lot of doors for me.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. So I'm going to let you all head out. Students, please stay on. Do not get off. We're going to talk about your brief comparative report that's due next week, that's based on the conversation that we had here. So ladies, thank you again so much. And I'll be in touch with all of you. Alicia, I'll see you in the morning.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right. That was filled with so much good information. I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm probably going to create a worksheet like I did with Rare Label, just to make sure that you all did not miss anything. So let's talk just briefly about the comparative report that you all are doing. So essentially what you are trying to do is present an overview of the various aspects that we discussed. And a lot of it has to do with the function sheets, the visualization, vendors. There were so many pieces of it. And what you're looking to do is to identify 3 similarities and 3 differences. It should be 1 to 2 pages, double spaced, 11-point font, and I will include this. So once that we're all done, I'm going to make sure that this video is uploaded in your module so that you will have it to refer back, just in case you want to re-listen and make sure that you got from the right person. It will be available to you, and the strategy session 5 will have this video, and it will also have exactly what my expectations are for the report. Okay, so we do still have, 11 more minutes. Y'all know how I like to take up every minute. When is it due? It is due, I want to make it due Sunday night, but I'm gonna probably make it due Monday. So I do want to have it before we come back to class on Tuesday, because Tuesday we'll be talking about what role you're playing and what your options are for your final assignment. But I definitely want you guys to hop in here in the chat. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you enjoyed. How informative was it? Who's out there? I know y'all are out there. I can see you guys on here. Yes. Faith, you loved it. Is Morgan still there? Yes, it was very interesting. Good. So glad to hear it, Sarah. Yes, thank you, Morgan. Thank you. Yeah, they really gave some great information, and I just found it amazing that they consistently touched on things that I didn't actually have integrated into their questions. So really excited. All right, well, yep, good. And I think that that's the important thing about us not having just one panelist to come and talk to you about what they do. I think that anytime that we're talking about a broader subject in event planning, you all really do need to hear from various professionals, because the perspectives, there are some things that are the same, but then there are other perspectives that completely change depending on what your actual goal is. Good, thank you, Miles. Daniela, good, thank you. All right, well, I won't hold you all any later. And I'll post an announcement once the video and instructions for your comparative report is posted. I will ask this before we hang up. Do you have any specific questions about the comparative report that you can drop in the chat box that maybe other students might have? 3 similarities, 3 differences from the viewpoints of the various panelists. No questions? All right, y'all. Well, I will see you next week. Please pay attention to the announcements as they come in, and pay attention to your module and the uploads that I put there. And yep, I'll be in touch. Thank you, guys. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, y'all have a good weekend too.